before we do any lecture today, I want to give you all as much opportunity as you could possibly hope to use to talk about case study number two. I had a number of questions about case study number two. I'm going to give y'all some of the answers to some of the questions I've gotten. But before we get there, what questions do you still have about this?
I remember you saying that we were supposed to put like the question we were answering on the title page. Was that correct?
Yes, please do that. Please put the question you're answering on the title page. This is especially helpful for your fellow students because I at least have a rough sense. I mean, I've read some of the papers. As Clayton will vouch, I maybe haven't memorized every case in the book super well, but I've the papers that most people are going to write, I will have already seen that question, and so it's kind of helpful for me, but it's super helpful for your peers who will just have don't make them go look in the book for like what kind of question are you trying to answer here.
I just picked a weird one.
Yeah, but so he picked the one about the small town fraud. I was like, is this even in the book? He's like, yeah, the book you assigned, yeah, it's in there. He was way more polite about it, but um, what other questions?
Is there any lenience for exceeding the word count? Because I find myself trying to cut things out and get it under 1,200 words, but I'm still just above it. Is there any kind of range that we're okay to stick with, or?
Yeah, 1250, 1300, no problem. I'm not even gonna notice. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
1500, try and cut it down. 2000, like no, dude.
Okay.
So, yeah. By about the end of a fifth full page, I'm starting to go like, okay, you don't need all of this. You don't need all of this. One thing I've definitely found as somebody who's written I mean, I've published probably, I mean, if you include the book and all the journal articles, I've probably published about 600 print pages worth of stuff, right? Like the book and journal article page, and that means I've written even just the stuff that became those things. That's probably more like 1,500 pages worth of stuff where I wrote it and cut it down and wrote more and cut it down and wrote more and just took this whole section. It's like I don't need that and this whole chunk. I mean, like my dissertation was 484 pages, and then I had to update it and put a whole bunch of new information into it to turn it into a book because it was about the politics of copyright, and that changes really that changes a lot. I mean, copyright just changed today because of the Supreme Court opinions that dropped. So I had to put in a bunch of new stuff, and it also had to be about 70% as long as the dissertation. So like that's just being able to do that is say, okay, I not only do I have to put more stuff in, but then I have to take enough stuff out to make room for that, and also have it come out a lot shorter. That's an important skill. But the don't cry too hard for the stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor. Like a good writer will leave good paragraphs, good sentences, sometimes good sections. I mean, a paper this length, hopefully not a whole section, but will leave good content out just because you don't have room.
If in the heat of the moment we forgot to put our questions on our thing before we submit it, can we resubmit a new one with the question on it, or is it just it is what it is?
Just do it. That's fine.
Okay.
Just I mean, like I would have to. You'd have to let me know, and I'd have to bounce that submission, and then you'd have to resubmit it, and you will have already been assigned peers to review your paper. So let's not bother with it. Just get it right the first time, please. But if not, it's not. It's I mean, this is just a courtesy to your readers. It's not really an important part of your grade. So if you're asking because you forgot that, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
So I'm gonna screen share a little bit to let me hide my slide deck so you don't see somehow my my PowerPoint has decided that you ever get the design ideas off on the right side on your PowerPoint? Right, I love that stuff. Some of it's really good, but some of it is really obnoxious. And like in the background right now, I have like a brain circulating, like spinning on an axis, and I'm like, I don't. Why do you think that that is a good visual for a slide that says what makes for unethical leadership? But I don't know. AI, hashtag AI fails. But okay, let me show you. Let me show you the screen for the assignment just to walk you through exactly how it's going to look. So you see the assignment now, yes? Yes, okay. Let me zoom in just a touch so it's super clear, even for those of you who are on slightly smaller screens, maybe. So like this is, so you're gonna, to submit it, the Trevor answered, so Rania joined and said in the chat, sorry, my mic is not working. The case 2 is due tonight at 11:59. Yes, it's due tonight at 11:59, especially because it's being peer reviewed. Please do meet this deadline. I mean, I've had a couple of people that say, I have COVID. Is that like, okay, yeah, no. If you have COVID, if you've been in a car wreck, any of that happened, please come talk to me. I mean, I'm trying to be beyond accommodating this semester because of everything that's going on. But the normal circumstances, just give us a good, credible paper by 11:59 today so your peers can have something good to review. You don't want to give them crap, give them something good. And by just before midnight tonight. And so here's what you're going to do. So there's a quick overview, how to write the paper, right? These sections, I'll come back to these sections here in just a sec. How to submit, right? So you're going to scroll down to the bottom, click the link below, and then, oh, it's not letting me. Oh, did I hit edit? Oh, no.
Gotta refresh it because the link goes dead after a minute.
Good call, thanks. Yes, okay. And so then at the bottom, load case study number 2, first draft with peer reviews in a new window. And so what this is going to do is this is going to link you to the part of the MindTap platform that you need to submit it to. It's technically an additional thing called Bongo, powered by Bongo. It all lives within MindTap. You don't have to know the difference between Bongo and I have to know the difference between Bongo and MindTap. You don't have to care at all. And so what you're going to do is you're going to hit add, and you're going to hit a file. Do not hit the link. Do not send me a Google Drive link or a one file, OneDrive link. None of that stuff. It's configuring that stuff correctly so that it's going to work for another person is not something that empirically people are good at. I have had no end of trouble with people submitting it as a link, so do not submit it as a link, which is why the image I include here has a big circle around the file button and 3 X's across the link button. Do not use the link, submit it as a file. Save it as a PDF and upload it as a file. I got a question today via email that said, can I send it as a Word document instead of as a PDF because Acrobat has expired? You don't need Acrobat, you need Word, which you already have for free as a student at MSU Denver. Word will save it as a PDF. If you don't know how to do that in Microsoft Word, let me know. I already copied the link. I sent it to this other student. I can just forward it to you. Save it as a PDF from Word, upload it here using the file button. You're going to select the file. And then, let's see. Let's submit Charles' example as a paper here. Now you have to click the star. This is important. Oh God, I'm going to zoom in way again. You have to click the star when you're ready to include it. If you just see how submit is grayed out because you haven't clicked the star. So you have to click the star and say, that's the submission. Okay, now I'm ready to submit it. When you're comfortable with the items included below, click. So when you're ready to say, this is final, this is it, I'm done, take it. Then you star it and then you hit submit. And then it'll say, are you sure you want to submit? Because that's it, you've submitted it. For the reasons we've noted, it's not, I mean, if you accidentally uploaded a blank one or something, let me know, I'll reset it for you and then you can submit it again. But it's oh, I didn't include the question or I messed up this one reference, it's fine, let it go. And then you have your post-submission instructions. After you've submitted, then you can do your peer review. Oh, so my first one is gonna be Simonis. So Simonis has already submitted his. So that would, as a hypothetical student in this situation, I get Simonis. And some people will say, oh, I only have one to review. I only have one to review. What do? Where do I get the other two? Well, review this one, and then you'll get the next one, and then you'll get the next one. So it just hands them to you one at a time, just review it. So you don't get to compare and contrast and all that. Just review each one on its merits. And then what is it? What is it? I'm sure you're all dying to know. What is it that you should be doing with the review? Okay, I'm at the stage, I've submitted my paper. Now I go to review my peers' papers. What should I be looking for? The same things that I'm looking for, which are right here, Use this as a checklist, and then if it looks like, let's say they've got what you're like, this seems like you think it's a thesis, but it's not a very good thesis, and here's how I think you can make it better. That is a helpful comment. That is a helpful comment, right? And so I want you to go through the intro and conclusion, the research, the main points, the writing and layout. I want you to grade it like you're an instructor. I want you to put a quantitative grade on it, but that's not, and don't grade super harshly. Pretty much everyone should get 70% or higher. That's 56 out of 80 points or higher. Pretty much everyone should get a 56 point or higher. And most of you should get 64 points or higher, right? Like most of you know how to write a term paper well enough, or a research paper well enough. You're getting A's and B's on this stuff if it's a good faith effort to complete that. So the most of the time you should be giving in the 60s and 70s and scores on these things. But that's not what's really important. What's really important as a reviewer is the 8, 10, 12 quick thoughts. Your thesis, I see where you have your thesis and I can kind of make sense of it, but it could be a lot clearer. Or I think, having read your paper, I think it might be something more like da, 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 da. Mwah. Mwah. Give me 8 of those, 10 of those, and you are doing your peers tremendous service. You're doing your peers a tremendous service in terms of helping them see how an average reader sees their paper, how another reader sees their paper.
When is the due date for us to have our reviews of the other students in? Is that noted someplace? Okay.
So a week from today at midnight.
Like the 12th. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, Monday the 12th at 11:59. So, and that's so your peers have enough time to use your reviews, and you have enough time to use your peers' reviews, because 2 weeks after that is when the revisions are due. So I think if you haven't figured it out by now, you should. Let me just be really explicit. I'm being pretty slack about deadlines this semester. It's been 2020, 2021 has been rough enough. I'm not trying to be a hard ASS, right? I'm trying to like get you through the semester and use deadlines as a way to get you to do stuff early enough that it doesn't all stack up at the end of the semester for your best interest. But I'm not trying to like use deadlines as a way to punish people, right? So pretty much everything else, I'm reasonably flexible. I even just accommodated a midterm. They took a big penalty. You do not want to miss an exam with me. I will make you take a big penalty. But I just accommodated a midterm for somebody who just missed it, right? So like, I'm not trying to use deadlines to be harsh on people. This stuff, the deadlines matter because your peers need your feedback, you need your peers' feedback, and everybody needs to have that done well enough, have those reviews in hand so that you can get your revisions done before the end of the semester crunch hits and you're trying to write 3 other papers.
So just to clarify, because I was my mic wasn't working.
Sure.
But just to clarify, tonight is our first draft with our peer reviews, or just a draft?
No. The first draft of just your paper is due tonight. And then once you've submitted, then you can start reviewing peers, and the system will automatically assign them to you. You can start reviewing your peers' papers. There are probably enough in there that everyone, as soon as you submit, you should be able to see 3 peers. And so you finish this up after this class at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're like, okay, let me go get a soda and a walk around the park, and then come back and bang out these reviews while it's on the top of my mind. Great, you should be able to do it tonight. I think there's probably enough in there for those of you who are motivated to do that too. If not, come back in a day or 2 and the reviews will be there for you to do. The reviews are due a week from today.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So we're reviewing 3 papers. Are we expecting 3 reviews in return for our own papers?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's the payoff for your work. Is 3 of your peers are going to give you feedback on your paper.
Okay.
Now, if one of them mails it in and one of them doesn't complete it, and one of them is like kind of helpful, you're like, Professor Herman, these were not good. Could you maybe be an extra reviewer on my paper? Okay, fine. I mean, for 6 or 8 or 10 of you, that in terms of reading it a little bit more closely and giving you the kind of feedback I gave you on case study number 1, I can make time for that for sure. Absolutely. Let me know if you get your review, if your review as of April 12th, 1 or 2 of your reviews isn't in, or only one of them is even kind of useful. You're like, please, take a closer look at my paper. Let me know that. You have to give me that information affirmatively, though. I'm assuming that I can largely delegate this out to your peers, that 85-90% of you are going to give pretty good feedback on each other's papers, and that you're going to get 2 to 3 pretty good sets of pretty good reviews from people, and that's really how you're going to be able to help improve your paper. If you're not sure how to implement that advice, if you have specific questions, if the reviews just weren't that helpful for you, please be in touch. But I'm gonna delegate this stuff to you all and trust that you all can do this.
One question regarding that real fast.
Yes.
Is the grade, the 80 points for the second submission, is that going to be graded by you, or is that going to be taken from the reviews by peers?
I will grade that. I will still have to go through every single essay and assign a grade. And they won't all be 80s. They won't all be 80s. But if it's about as good as your first one, it's gonna be a lot closer to 80 than it will to like a 56 or a 64. If you mail it in, there's no floor. If it's 2 pages long and has 3 sources, like, you're not going to like your grade. You still have to write a good paper. But if it's a good faith effort to create a pretty good paper, but it's not ideal, it's not great, you're going to be pretty happy with your grade. Use this as your checklist as you're reviewing. This is what I'm looking for, so this is what you should be looking for, right? Do you have at least 3 scholarly sources, at least 8 total sources? Are they good sources? Are they cited well, right? Remember, cite to the author, not to the publication title. You could have 3 different articles from the Wall Street Journal in there. And so if you cite Wall Street Journal, that doesn't help. That doesn't help. And also, that's not how you alphabetize in the works cited list anyways. You alphabetize by author. So you cite to the author, so I can, oh, okay, that's Valerio wrote that. So I can go look up Valerio in the works cited list. So I do like your work in the Wall Street Journal, by the way, Denzel.
If there is no author, like, for example, I have something that's governmental,
Sure.
There's not like a specific author. How exactly do you want us to source that in our works cited?
Sure. Alphabetize by title. The title should be the first thing. Alphabetize it by title, and then cite to the title in the essay. And if the title is more than a few words long, then cite just by like the first few words.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a question. Do you mean cite them like the first few words, or the inside the parentheses?
Yeah, within the parentheses.
Oh, the author. Yeah, I got you. I did that. Thank you.
Yeah. So like, this is one of the privacy reports I've dug into for the Federal Trade Commission. Protecting consumer privacy in an era of rapid change. Recommendations for business and policy. Do not cram all of that into the parentheses. Do not cram all of that in. This whole thing, that whole title should be in the works cited list, right? But then it could be like protecting consumer privacy in quotes, right? So that I know it's the title of something, and then it's alphabetized by protecting consumer privacy, and we're good. In a case like this, you could just say the Federal Trade Commission is the author too, if that's easier. And I think that's also a sensible decision. I think either is acceptably correct, but just to give an example of something where it's like, it's not. I mean, if I were writing a paper about federal trade, the politics of privacy at the Federal Trade Commission, I don't want to cite FTC-A, FTC-B, FTC-C, or FTC 2012-A or 2012-B or 2012-C. I'm going to see if the journal is going to let me get away with citing to title, because that's going to be a lot easier for me to keep track of, and it's got to be a lot easier for the reader to know sort of what it is that I'm referencing there. Anything else?
Would it be helpful if we also provided the formatting we used for our paper too? Like if we put somewhere that we used APA or MLA or something like that, do you think that that's helpful for people reading our paper as far as sources goes and how it's all laid out?
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to do so. You're welcome to do so. I'm not enough of a stickler about APA or MLA, and I frankly don't remember the differences between them well enough it matters to me. I mean, like, do you cite by author? Is it alphabetized by author? And when I go to the works cited list, does it have the author, the year, the name of the periodical, the name of the article, page number where appropriate, so that if I want to go track it down, I can go track it down. Oh, one more thing, by the way, all those links that you all include that are like 5 lines long, that are these encrypted links to deep within a library database, those don't even work. Not only do they not work for me, if you copy and paste it later, they don't even work for you. So like, don't bother including those. That's not gonna, I mean, if it's, Forbes.com / ... or nytimes.com / ... fine, great. Yeah, those work. But the stuff from deep inside a database, like that's not those URLs. That's just that's what your browser shows you at that moment. But 2 hours, 2 days later, those URLs don't even work. So just don't bother including those. Simonis.
I was just going to add to what you just said. I've noticed that at the Ray Area resources we have, all the journals, at the bottom of the articles, they have DOI links, which are links that are alive and you can use to source, and they're usually not super long and just easy to put in your works cited.
Yes, that is correct. So. Let me give you an example. You were totally right, Simonis. That is 100% true. Thank you.
Also, in most of these, they have a cite button next to them, and they just auto-generate the cite for you, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yes, that is also true. So, communications to ACM, great. First hit is already a journal article. So let's start with what Clayton had for us, right? Oh my gosh, ABNT, AMA, etc. Right? Harvard, MLA, great. A lot of you are going to do MLA. So this is the DOI that Simonis mentioned, right? That's really fun. If you just go to doi.org and then drop it in there. Takes me right to the journal article website that hosts that article. How slick is that, right? So instead of a web address, if it's Forbes.com, if it's Time.com, if it's a reputable periodical and it's just the open web and you should include that URL because those work and those work well. But for journal articles in particular, those DOIs is really what you want to include. I'm not sure if those I really only use those for journal articles, but I wonder if they have them for Forbes too. Let's see. Stuff like that. Nope. So some of the regular periodicals and stuff like that, they're not going to have those, but for the journal articles, they will have them. And that's that. So, but yeah, here's the works cited thing. You just copy that and throw it in. I will ask you, please. It's just it's like the tiniest annoyance. I won't dock you for this, just for the sake of like aesthetics. D all caps this, right? like EBSCO is all caps, ACM is all caps, Cabañas is not all caps. That's like a normal name. So like don't so the capital C lower A B A N A S, right? Turn those to lower caps. If you get around to it, that's the least consequential request I will make today, but small preference.
Professor, for the secondary version of the paper after the feedback, it's
Mhm.
graded based on your criteria against what feedback we received, right?
No, just according to the absolute standard.
Oh, okay. So they're trying to just help us make a better paper, but if we follow their lead and it makes it a worse paper, then hopefully it doesn't do that. But
I mean, like, I don't, if you're unclear about whether it's good advice, please come talk to me. They said, I mean, they think I should be using 4chan in my paper. Did you, like, no, do not use 4chan in your paper.
well, I just wasn't sure if it was purely like, we're using the peer review to create that paper and then you would take in their review and our paper together, or if it was just strictly the second time around you're grading it as another paper.
Yeah, just as another paper. How good is this final paper according to the absolute standard? And if you, I mean, assuming you do get good feedback from your peers, and then as necessary, come to me and say, hey, I'm getting conflicting feedback, or I didn't get the feedback, or it wasn't that helpful. Then you should be very happy with the final paper that you produce, and I should be very happy with the final paper that you produce, and therefore we should all be very happy with your grade.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. What else?
The peer reviews are not like actually due April 12th, right? Because it says on mine tab that is due at 5th. Is that only the paper or just
So the paper is due on the 5th. I couldn't set up a separate deadline for the peer reviews in that. So none of these tools are perfect, unfortunately. So you have to rely on this part, which tells you that the reviews are due by the 12th.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just because I'm looking at it right now. So to get to our peer reviews, you go to the exact same link, you click on your submission and you scroll down to the bottom and then it should say your paper and then if anyone's reviewed it, right? Yeah, perfect.
Correct. Yeah. So I have let me refresh this. See if it keeps me in the student view. Yes. So I've already you saw me submit the example paper here already. And so you'll be in the same position that I'm in right now after you've submitted your paper. You just come back, click on that same link, and it takes you right there. And if the paper's already been submitted, you're already at post-submission instructions, which is great. Review your stuff. Again, let's see here. Oh, now it has me reviewing Denzel's paper.
I just turned it in too.
Oh, cool. Good.
Yeah.
See. And then it'll show up in the. I think it's only limited because it's like a preview version for me. Like you'll actually see. So I did this for BizCom where I didn't review each other's speeches. Super slick. Didn't have a single problem where people couldn't figure it out. Super easy. If you're having problems, please let me know. But and if it sounds systemic, I'll go to I'll record a quick walkthrough about how to do it, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. But I used this Bongo based system for BizCom last semester for peer reviews, and it was super helpful.
Do you care the format of our reviews? Do you want it more like yours where it's broken down by whatever you're talking about, the reviews you gave us, or do you want a paragraph that's all of it so it's easy and concise? Doesn't matter.
I mean, I think as with the paper, I think if you break it down by section, that's more helpful. you know, so like, let me tell you about the intro and conclusion. Let me tell you about your main points. Let me tell you about your references. Let me tell you about your writing style real quick. And if it's, you know, if it's, you know, each one of, you know, two of those are like, this was great, keep doing that. And then the other two, you've got some more critical feedback. Then I think even like, this is great, keep doing that is, you know, or it's, you know, certainly with the writing, you know, something to the effect of like, it's pretty good. You've got a few, you know, another round of proofreading and you should probably catch everything, but it's fine is fine feedback too. But, and then if you focus in on the areas where there's more substantial room for improvement, I think that's probably more helpful for people instead of it all just being like a big block of text.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
These are great questions.
Is this the same structure we're going to use for the video case study presentation?
Well, yeah, we'll have you submit it on Bongo. We'll have you submit it on Bongo if that's your question.
Yes.
Yes. So, I think I've probably done enough big upsets of the syllabus for the semester. I'm not going to throw peer reviews on that one as well, but I think I will throw that on for that assignment for summer and next fall as well. But for now, it'll just be submitted. Another really cool thing it does for speeches is that it will give you automated diagnostics in terms of how many filler words you have, whether your rate of speed is too fast or too slow, whether you're clear enough, that sort of thing. It does not do, so as you might imagine, I in particular am a little bit attuned to the fact that the AI is not perfect. It works best for people who sound like me. And so the less you sound like me naturally, the less helpful that is likely to be. And so take that feedback with a grain of salt. If it seems like, oh, I listened to myself and I didn't hear a lot of filler words, but it's misinterpreting this and this and this as a filler word because I don't sound like Professor Herman. That's okay. That's obvious. But it's not, and that's not how I don't use that at all for grading, but that's just sort of for your feedback because in particular for filler words, I think we underestimate how many filler words we use in speech. And I'm 100% guilty of that as well. And I'm a former debate champion. So it's not, we all do it.
Are we doing peer evaluations of the speech as well, or it will just be a speech to you? Okay.
Just to me. Any more? Going once? Going twice? Okay, sold to the man who wants to give a lecture on unethical leadership / ethical leadership / what makes for the difference. Switch back to Zoom here, share my screen. Oh, wait. You're already seeing it, yes? Excellent, excellent. So the main thing that I want to highlight from the chapter is the concept of normative myopia. Normative myopia, myopia is just a technical term for short-sightedness, which is why we've got this dog with eyeglasses in this image here. Normative myopia or normative short-sightedness is the mistaken view that leaders often get when leaders overlook or stifle the important core values that are at stake in a decision. They believe, myopic leaders believe normative values do not apply to managerial decisions. They believe that facts and values can be separated in decision-making. And they believe that normative values are outside the realm of business. Right, and so the result is this kind of ethical blindness and propensity to rationalize an unethical action and turn a blind eye when you see unethical actions. So I don't believe that there's any such thing as a decision that is free of values. I don't believe there's any such thing as a decision that that can be made that is free of values. That's not to say that I expect you or even want you to stop and think about the value implications of every decision you make every day at your place of business. I think that's an unrealistic expectation. Anybody here seen The Good Place? Yes. So you know who I'm going to reference then. Right? Agonizing over every single decision.
Chidi?
Oh yeah.
Yes, Chidi. Who said that? Clayton.
Me.
Yes, yes. Chidi is an ethical philosopher who gets punished with eternal damnation because his waffling and indecision around the ethical component of every decision makes him ruin many people's lives around him. He ruins a wedding. He ruins it, like just all sorts of crazy, terrible things because he just over agonizes about the values of every decision. But one of my favorite examples is, do I put almond milk in my coffee because it's already vegan, right? So clearly better environmental implications than moo juice, which I drink. I'm not trying to diss anybody who's not vegan. But oh my gosh, think about all the water that it takes to grow an almond, and I'm using all that water just to make my coffee taste a little bit better. Is that okay? Is that do not want you agonizing a la Chidi about the value implications of every single decision. But every single decision, if you dig, that is in there. That is in there. The almond milk in your coffee does have value implications, right? An almond versus cow milk versus black. That has value implications for how if you stop and look at it. So I think every truly gifted ethical leader, at least for everything important, maybe they have never thought about this sort of almond milk level stuff as having that, but at least for everything that has real impact, like real substantial impact, on the business and on the way that the business treats other people and it's the way that the business exists in the world, understands that there are values built into all of these different decisions, and is able to stop and unpack them and look at them as necessary and sees the value implications. In other words, a truly gifted leader, a gifted ethical leader, either wears their glasses or doesn't need correction, and because they can see the values that are around everywhere. Which is brings us back to a concept that came up in the midterm that a higher number of you than I thought did not do well on this question on the midterm about ethical issue intensity. Ethical issue intensity is the idea that as perceived by a given individual, is this an ethical issue? And how much is the discussion around this issue an ethical question? Is there an ethical issue here, and how much of it is an ethical question? That the more you see the ethics and the more you think that the ethical questions dominate the way that you should think about that issue, that's from the perspective of whoever sees it that way, that's higher or increasing ethical issue intensity. That's what that concept means. And ethical issue intensity is a really important, the ability to see ethics in things and to understand that the ethical component of that should shape how you think of things is a really key component of being a good ethical leader, right? Just the ability to see that stuff and then not only see the ethical issue intensity for yourself, but then to be able to explain it to other people and bring them on board to thinking about it, not merely as a technical or a financial or a procedural decision, but that it is also, at least in some part, an ethical decision. Now, that's not to say that the good ethical leader runs around turning that knob up to 11 at all times, right? You can't be the child who cries wolf either, but and when there's an 11, you definitely got to see it and say, hey, everyone, there are huge ethical implications. We got to really stop and think about those. But the good ethical leader also not only sees the 11s, but sees the 3s and 4s and 5s and brings that level, an appropriate level of ethical priming, an appropriate level of ethical questions into those discussions, because the threes and fours and fives add up a lot as well. You get enough of those going the wrong direction in a company, you're going the right direction in a company, pretty soon you have a pretty substantial shift in the ethical culture, the reputation, the impact on stakeholders that company has. So you got to have the ability to identify a more or less intense issue and bring other people on board to that. The book talks about 4 different types of leaders. I think this is worth highlighting a little bit for some of the stuff that the book doesn't cover, but also because I think this is just, I like this stuff. I think it's super fun and interesting. We have the unethical leader, the apathetic leader, the ethical leader, and the psychopathic leader. I'll bet you can guess which is my favorite to talk about. We will get there. But I'm gonna go through each of these 4 reasonably quickly. First is the unethical leader. Now I'm going to give the Ken Lays of the world. This is Ken Lay from Enron. I'm going to give the Ken Lays of the world the benefit of the doubt in saying that they are unethical, even if they're not psychopaths, right? I'm going to give Ken Lay the benefit of the doubt and assume that he has empathy and was not a psychopath. Was not a psychopath, that he was just an unethical leader, a garden variety person who just, the searches for legal loopholes, perceives ethics codes, compliance regulations, and industry standards as optional, gladly sees justifications for breaking laws, right? Whether that's because it serves a greater good or because the risk of getting caught is low. And these unethical leaders are usually egocentric. It's pretty hard to have an affirmatively unethical way of going about business without feeling like you somehow are entitled to these profits or these gains or this market share or something like that. So it takes a certain amount of ego almost as a prerequisite, not 100% of the time, but typically as a prerequisite. It's also, it's hard too, because CEOs also, I'm sure Ken Lay loved him some Ken Lay, and that's typical of CEOs in general anyway, is that they're going to have a pretty healthy ego on them to think you should run a Fortune 500 I do not want to. I'm not sure I want to be the dean of the College of Business at a state access university. That's probably a little that already seems a little bit I don't know if that I want that much responsibility. So to go the 15 steps of higher pressure and higher expectations and higher visibility that you go from there up to the head of a Fortune 500 company, it's going to take some ego to get there for sure. So but above and beyond that is the sort of the willingness to cut corners. I really like, in addition to Ken Lay, I really like the example of Jamie Dimon. That's another reason I really like that TEDx talk. As I confessed that we showed last Wednesday, as I confessed, one of my favorite reasons is that he's just so angry and throws his employer under the bus, and it's fun, it's entertaining, it's one you will remember, I hope. But I also really like that he's very specific about a specific company in the form of Chase and a specific leader in namely Jamie Dimon. Again, I'm willing to give Jamie Dimon the benefit that the CEO of Chase, who's been the CEO of Chase for probably longer than any of you have even had any thoughts about what your college major is going to be, the benefit of the doubt. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's probably not a psychopath. Right? He probably is just a garden variety person with a really healthy ego who just is willing to engage in affirmatively unethical behaviors because he believes it makes his bank more money. I think his bank could probably make just as much money and fewer headaches and have better brand equity if they just didn't break the law. But they're constantly, if you look through if you just use your search provider of choice and find look for all of the different penalties that Chase has paid, and then look at each of those cases and what was involved, and it's just shady behavior after shady behavior after shady behavior, and he just co-signs on it and just lets it all grow. And in a lot of ways is I'm sure is at least implicitly encouraging that by constantly pushing for more and more and more performance. So that's how you get an unethical leader is people who, I'm entitled to this, and then how do I bend the rules or break the rules without getting caught in a way that lets me get that to which I'm entitled. Then we have the apathetic leader. Anybody recognize this person?
Is that the autopilot from Airplane?
Yes. Yes, this is Otto, the autopilot from the Leslie Nielsen movie Airplane, which, by the way, was kind of offensive by the standard of its time in the 70s. By today's standards, you're like, some of it is just like cover your eyes, like, oh, dude, that is deeply offensive. But it is also really funny in a lot of spots. My favorite, a lot of my favorite scenes center around the cockpit, in particular, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which is one of my favorite cameos in film history. Like, no, I'm sorry, this kid is convinced that it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he's like, no, I'm sorry, you got me confused with somebody else. Even though it actually is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I don't even watch basketball. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly, right. And yeah, so for those of you who are going to watch the movie, I won't ruin all the Kareem jokes, but it's really fun. I actually saw Kareem one time in a restaurant in New York City, and I was just like sitting down at my table at this Indian restaurant on Lexington at about, I don't know, 58th or 60th or something. And then in he comes, and he just like walks this way, and even from like here from behind, I was like, I think I know who that is. And I did. It was definitely. There just aren't a lot of 7 foot tall bald guys with that particular frame as well. So it's like, yeah, I think I know who that is, and it was. And then I was with my friend Deirdre and a whole bunch of other people, and my friend Deirdre is really excitable, and she's from Indiana, where basketball is just short of like heaven, right? It's really important in Indiana, and I lean. I've made eye contact with him, but I'm trying not to stare. And I lean in. I'm like, okay, guys, let's not stare. Don't stare. But just over there, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just sat down, and Deirdre goes, "What?" It's like, you just let's not make a scene, please. Anyway, but so back to Otto. The apathetic leader lets the organization go on autopilot. Right? Doesn't really care for ethics, views ethics as relative or optional in a business context, isn't affirmatively looking for, all of Ken Lay or Jamie Dimon, affirmatively looking for ways to get an edge that skirt right up against the edge of the law or sometimes go right past it, right? But they're just not, they're not willing to sort of like rein in unethical behavior either. They're not really trying to build an affirmatively ethical culture in their organization. They often display no passion for their firm or for the mission of the organization. Employees don't see them making the same sacrifices that other managers or leaders are making. They're just going along to get along. They're just showing up to get a paycheck, punching in, punching out, and letting people do their thing, whether that's ethical or unethical. And that's how you get that's how you get an organization that's on autopilot, is when the leaders are doing this. Ethical leader. I hope business casual Thor here is familiar enough by this point in the semester that a lot of you recognize. Thank you, Logan. I at least got a smirk out of somebody. But who is this?
That's the guy that gave up his salary for everybody else to have a living wage.
Yes, absolutely. That's Dan Price. He's the CEO of Gravity Payments. Who gave up his big CEO salary so that everyone else could make at least $70,000 a year. When COVID hit, took a big pay cut down to zero, and so that they could lay fewer people off. Other people did take pay cuts. Not everyone was still making 70, but did everything they can to keep everyone doing as well as possible when their business was cut by half. Is a hugely outspoken civic leader. Is a really good example of, in my view, of, and I don't know the intricacies of Gravity Payments. I mean, maybe there could be other problems there that he's not especially good at addressing. But as far as I know, a great example of an ethical leader, where you include ethics at every operational level. You address issues as soon as they appear. You try to create a participative organizational culture, right? And you view employee collaboration as an important resource. So, like, what you want to get is everyone feeling like this is our place. This is our place, and we want it to be so, like, if you've ever lived with more than one roommate, you know how important it is to like get collective action all pointed in the same direction of like, this is our kitchen. That's not just my mess or your mess or their mess. This is our kitchen, and we've all got to clean it. We've all got to take care of it. So the more you get collaboration in that direction, where everyone is doing the ethical version of washing other people's dishes as necessary, because you know that they're going to do it for you next week, the better off you are. So getting that buy-in and going above and beyond, where you're making more sacrifices than other people as the leader is the best way to get that kind of culture going.
I just found out this past week that the CEO of Texas Roadhouse gave up his salary for his employees to keep wages during COVID. I
Yes.
hadn't heard that before, but
Yes, that is true as well. That is true as well. In all honesty, I always have liked Texas Roadhouse better than Outback. So that's just maybe even happier. You know, I have to be honest though. In the case as a customer though, it's more about the quality of the steak and also the butter brown sugar sweet potatoes. But it's basically dessert for dinner. It's fantastic. But yeah, no, that's I mean that kind of sacrifice that a leader makes it is such makes such a statement about the company and what the company stands for. So like, you know, imagine knowing that the CEO slashed his pay so that you could keep your job, and then you start stealing from the till. That's gonna be harder to do than if you know that the CEO is also doing the equivalent of stealing from the till. You know, so you just it's the best way to make the biggest single thing you can do to make an ethical culture is sacrifices, visible sacrifices like that. Let's see. Oh, this is a few minutes back. Sorry about that. Sorry I missed this, but I forgot to ask if we need a title page because, for example, the MLA style, they don't do title pages unless they are required. They're required here. They're do it again. I'm not going to really dock you for it. I didn't take a single point off for the first round for people not. Just please do a title page, and then that gives you as a chance to see your name and the title and the question that you're answering. If you want to identify your citation style there, that would be a good place to do that. Maybe find an interesting image that encapsulates your essay if you have a minute, but not necessary. But please, yes, it is required that you have a title page for my essay. Fourth and finally, psychopathic leaders. This is an area that I just find endlessly fascinating, and not anything that involves the DSM. I mean, I'm a social scientist by nature, so you can imagine we're all kind of like at least psychology adjacent. And I think digging into the DSM and talking about how other people look at these classifications and categorizations and what counts and doesn't count, that's all super fascinating for me. And so I want to talk about being a psychopath in a little bit more detail. To understand where I'm going with this, also, I want to throw out the term antisocial personality disorder. If you look up psychopath in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Psychologists and Psychiatrists, the DSM, that I'm sure many of you have heard of, at least the fourth and fifth edition. 1, 2, I don't know anything about, but the current ones, and certainly number 5, the psychopath gets folded into antisocial personality disorder. But I think that's a little bit misleading in the sense that like antisocial personality disorder is just like a little bit bigger. I mean, like you take the 7 criteria that they put in the DSM, you only have to meet 3 of these to be antisocial personality disorder. And there's a lot more specifics about each that I don't know about, so I could be getting these a little bit wrong. But they are failure to conform to social norms, deceitfulness, impulsivity, irritability and aggressiveness, reckless disregard for safety, consistent irresponsibility, and lack of remorse. Right. So obviously, if you have all 7 of those, you've got a really problematic individual on your hand. And that's where we're really talking about what most people mean when they say psychopath. But there are people. I think there are a number of people that could be categorized as having antisocial personality disorder who don't meet, by only meeting 3 of these, wouldn't necessarily take that to mean that you're a psychopath. Like not the healthiest member of society in terms of your contributions to society, right? If you tick 3 of these, you're probably I'd probably rather you not be my neighbor. But if you take, like, for instance, impulsivity, irritability and aggressiveness, and consistent irresponsibility, right? I mean, like, that sounds like the people who are, driving their crotch rockets up and down I-25 at 1 a.m. at 120 miles an hour, right? I don't think those people are psychopaths. I think they're clearly not the most valued members of society in the contribution, at least not with that particular activity, right? That's an antisocial activity, right? That's not they clearly, failure to conform to social norms like that. Sure. In that case, they're like, the fact that they're doing twice the speed limit doesn't bother them. but if you look at some of the other mixes you could come up with, right? In particular, deceitfulness, reckless disregard for safety, and lack of remorse. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care who gets hurt. I don't feel bad when you get hurt, and I'm gonna lie about it. Like that's when we're starting to, that combination of activities, right? Plus the first one, failure, where if social norms have no persuasive value for people, then that's really when you're starting to look at have people who are legitimately manipulating other people for their own benefit in a way that is genuinely dangerous. That is genuinely dangerous. Now, that's not to say that psychopaths are all violent. Most of them are not. This is a prevalence that people think is maybe about 1% of the population. Thankfully, we don't have anything like that many serial killers, right? Like we just don't have, or even legitimately like regularly violent people. The percentage in the CEO suite though actually goes up. Some studies have shown, right? So let me see, where's this? Forbes has I've got a link here in the slide notes. Forbes has a great story about a scholar who looked at the CEOs and of Fortune 500 companies and guesses that something like 4 to 12% of them are psychopaths, right, versus 1% of the general population. And think about why that is, right? When we think about it, when we're talking about a psychopath, we're talking about superficial charm, right? They're incredibly ingratiating, grandiose self-worth, right? So far, we're just at narcissist, right? Like that's so like a whole lot of narcissists are in the C-suite. It's like you got to have a really healthy ego and be really, sort of, in a lot of companies, it can help to be reasonably good at sort of getting people to do what you want to do. And so, thinking that you really should be in charge and being really charming with it, like that's really helpful. I think for a lot of jobs anyway. But it's the lack of conscience, little to no empathy. You really enjoy flouting rules, right? That's when you go from like a narcissist into a genuine psychopath. And I'm any given CEO, any given executive leader, I'm willing, unless I know a whole lot more about that person, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and maybe say like, okay, you have a track record of unethical behavior that makes you an unethical leader, and not call them a psychopath. So use this term sparingly, but keep an eye out for this, because this is some of you will run into this in the workplace. Some of you probably already have. And so this is beware, beware, beware.
Do you know who's like the most known psychopath leader, like in the big companies?
I have not looked into this. I have not looked. That's a good question. That's a good question. I've not looked into this. Again, I know more about it as sort of as a psychologist would, instead of as like a business person would. So I've not looked into this. I'm maybe a fun topic for examination. But at the same time, like it's who's going to publish that, right? Like how many lawyers can Jamie Dimon afford? How many lawyers can any Fortune 2000 company afford, right? Like a lot. And so if you're going to come out in a journal article and say, yeah, so and so is a psychopath, that's I don't think the attorneys over in the Jordan Student Success Building are going to appreciate the headache that I'm going to cause for them if I do something like that.
Yeah. It just would be very surprising if there was one that's really common and known, and their business it's really booming. That would be quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, yeah, they're out there. I would feel really uncomfortable accusing someone of being a psychopath that I didn't know well, though. I mean, like I'm not a therapist, right, or a psychiatrist, and so I mean, those folks, even if they feel like they know you pretty well, are incredibly reluctant to say anything publicly about you, because that's not like, until you're their client, like they're not like that's kind of not their job. But I'm a little more comfortable doing that, but at the same time, like I don't know any of these people well enough to say, even just sort of like in a lecture like this, where I feel comfortable saying something like that. Good question, though. Good question. Okay, so we've got 3 problematic types. Ethical leader, that's great. We know that's good. We want that. But of the other 3 problematic types, which is the most common, do you think?
Apathetic.
Apathetic. And why do you think that is?
I think it's just easier not to care than to care.
Yes. Yes. It is easier not to care than to care. That is exactly why apathetic leaders are really easy to come by. It's really easy to find, affirmatively unethical, like, ooh, what rules can I bend or nudge or try to work around so that I can get that extra edge? Like, that's hard. Just being on autopilot, like, that's easy, right? So when you think about figure 11.2, right, I want you to, and I'm going to walk you through this. I want you to picture a big spring, a giant spring tethered at the low end of it. So like the 0 point on the scale, right? Imagine a big spring tethering leaders down, and to go in either direction takes more energy than to just let the spring pull you down towards low assertiveness and low cooperativeness. So avoiding, like these conflict management styles, avoiding conflict is the easiest way to do, because there's that, just picture that big spring going and pulling you down towards avoidance. And if you want to confront someone even in a non-cooperative way, or if you want to be accommodating, even in a non-assertive way, like that takes more effort to be like, guys, come on, these are the rules, you know the rules, just follow the rules, please, right? By the way, this is me with deadlines this semester. Right? Just please make them, but I'm accommodating, right? And then the second most common thing to do is to hang out here most of the time, but then to blow up at people. And so in a very non-cooperative way, just jump up with a burst of assertiveness and say, gosh darn it, you know the rules. What is wrong with you? Why have you not been following them, right? And just let it go, and then blow up at people. That's also a fairly common conflict management style. Don't do that either. What you want to do is use your perception of ethical issue intensity as fuel to stretch that spring. Use ethical issue intensity as fuel to stretch that spring, right? So if it's like a little bit of an issue, right, at least get up into the sort of middling cooperative assertiveness, middling assertiveness, middling cooperativeness, middling assertive, just into this compromising area of like, listen, I know you're doing it this way. You're probably right that no one's going to get hurt, but really the right way to do it is this way, and here's why. And just have a reasoned conversation with people where it's like a 3, a 4, or 5 out of 10, and have a conversation that reflects like, this is not a 0. This is not an issue. It's not a huge issue. We really are going to need you to do something a little bit different, and here's why. And so that sort of what you want to do as a leader is largely live in here to the extent that something needs to change, to the extent that something needs to be pushed. Now, if it turns out that like, oh wow, we've been doing this the wrong way the whole time, like my one of my friends was a process safety engineer. He's 75 now, but he was a process safety engineer in like the nuclear and the chemical plant industry for a long time. Like, this is an important job. This is a really important job. And so his goal was to come in and get people to say like, listen, you've been hanging out down here and just letting autopilot and let that be good enough, but you're blowing up plants every 6 weeks. You've got safety incidents happening every month. Like, this is not okay. We've really got to pull up in this direction, and that push towards safety, that push towards compliance, that push towards more reliability of the plants too, right? Because when the plant goes down, then the firm makes less money. Was a huge push for him to really pull people up in this direction, to where he's being assertive and like, you've got to change these things, but it's really more like about, we've got to change these things, and here's why, but I'm going to tell you how to do it, right, in a way that sort of even goes a little bit past the compromising, and then get that culture to buy in, and then he moves on because he was a consultant, and then he'd move on, and then the company could kind of just live here and then find the little areas to improve once his model was put in place. So for most leaders, not being apathetic is the push. That's the hard drive. That's where the magic happens. I want to give you a quick example. This is from a book I've been reading, Algorithms of Oppression. This woman, Professor Noble, who's at UCLA, It has this great book. It's called Algorithms of Repression. She was one of the 2 speakers at that event that I pushed out for extra credit that happened last Tuesday, I think it was. Every day is Blur's Day now. The Algorithms of Repression is a great example of a case study that shows how people who have ethical myopia, right, because they have their ethical issue intensity perception is non-existent when there actually is an ethical issue, that those people can really be responsible for creating something that has a lot of unintentional harm to stakeholders. And the example she talks about to start the book, it's really compelling, is, and thankfully this is no longer true. Thankfully this is no longer true thanks to pushback that Google got. But for the longest time, if you did a Google search on black girls, I've looked up the images of what those results look like, right? Anybody want to guess about why I'm not showing them to you? This was not it, by the way. This is no.
Was it the old National Geographic stuff?
Nah, that was some of that. It might have been in there, but that wasn't the dominant theme. Are y'all just too embarrassed to say it? Porn. It's porn. You did search for black girls, you got a result for porn. And the idea was that Google just went around looking at what the internet had to say about what certain terms mean. Went around the internet looking at what certain terms mean, right? And the internet has good places and bad places, right? I mentioned a website earlier. I'm not even going to mention it again, right? That is not like, not only don't use it as a research source, like just avoid. Like, not fun, not a nice site. And the internet has tons of those, right? And so if Google just says, well, okay, all of these toxic ones link to each other and they link to each other for this keyword, and it's boom, here's what's comes up, and it's all pornographic. The vast majority of engineers at Google are white men or Asian men, right? So the imagined audience for search, guess who that is, right? If those engineers in that room aren't thinking about the other stakeholders that their search engine could be having an effect upon. So that imagined audience that a lot of the internet, not all of the internet, but a lot of the internet is aimed toward, and in particular, the commercial pornographic industry is really good at gaming search engines so that they're the first, because they're competing with other porn sites, right, to be the first result for, this type of person or that type of person engaged in pornographic activity. Google just never thought through whether their search weighting pornographic sites similarly for non-pornographic terms as the way they weight non-pornographic sites might have a negative effect on some people. And so Professor Noble is sitting down with some family. She's trying to look for something related to black girls. And this is something much more like this is what she's looking for. Is much more what she's looking for, hairstyles or activities or movies that are of interest to them, that sort of thing. But that's not what comes up, because this is the imagined audience for the search, because this is the imagined audience for so much of the way that people have gamed the search engines. And the engineers at Google just didn't see there being an ethical component to this at all. And so instead of this, they let pornographic results be the lead results for a search for black girls, and didn't even think about it until they were pressured on it. And then once they were pressured on it, then they tweak the algorithm a little bit, and all of a sudden, if you're looking for pornographic results, you have to basically make it really clear that you're looking for pornographic results with pretty pornographic targeted search terms. So that was a decision that they could have made in the first place. That was a decision they could have made in the first place, but they didn't make it in the first place, and because those engineers had that kind of myopia where they didn't think through the ethical implications of the engineering decisions that they were making. And if they'd been more farsighted, if they'd had some ethical issue intensity around that decision, and for when you're talking about designing a whole darn search engine, something like that is maybe a 3 or 4 or 5. It's not an 11, right? But it's not nothing. It's not nothing. It has, and think about the negative effect that has on a certain kind of on a certain kind of stakeholder, which already faces a lot of negative things, a lot of negative things from other institutions as well in society. So it's lots of little things like this. It's not this exclusively. It's certainly not just this, but lots and lots and lots of little things of ethical myopia on the part of engineers who continue to not think through the privacy implications, not think about the gender implications, not think about the bad publicity that they're going to get from this and this and that and that. All of a sudden, you have a technology industry that has gone down dramatically in terms of how much the public trusts in them. So this is a Pew Internet, an American Life study that looks at trust in various industries over time. And this is the members of both parties. This is just overall total top line number for everyone across the political spectrum. Do you say technology companies have had a positive effect or a negative effect on the way things that are going in this country? 2010, 2012, 2015, these numbers are 68, 70, 71%. Right? This is higher than higher ed, higher than churches at this point, in terms of is it net positive or net negative for society, right? But after, you know, the sort of, oh, this is cool, this is nifty, look at all the cool things that this is doing, right? But after enough years of like, oh, here's a privacy scandal, here's a discrimination scandal, here's this, here's that, here's the other, all, you know, here's, targeted online harassment is just let go for years, and it's not, oh, that's not my issue, that's not my problem, this is for the users to identify. Between 2015 and 2020, they lose 20 points, 21 points of support from the general public in terms of thinking a positive versus negative effect on society, right? This is in my view, is a real palpable outcome of ethical myopia on the part of a whole industry that just didn't think through a lot of what they've been producing. So don't do this. Don't let this be your company. Don't let this be your industry. Don't let this be your team. Work to see around the corners by recognizing that there are no value-free judgments, and stop and think about, like, how are we affecting stakeholders? How are we affecting broader society? And how can I bring that message to my team by not being apathetic, but by at least getting up into that sort of that middle zone of where I'm trying to, you know, identify the 3s and 4s and 5s and correct them on an ongoing basis to build a more ethical culture. The more you do that, the more you avoid these kinds of effects where all of a sudden, like, whoa, now everyone hates us. What happened?